Yeah, so thank you. That's a very good suggestion, which I'm sure NITI will take up for further action. But let me, I wanted to, this sentence is very important. I see skilling as an integrated thing, and this is not my idea. The PM expressed it. I am not sure whether he used these words, but he expressed it very well. And then these words are what I have picked up. So I think that I'm just going to give you an idea of why this is important. So skill for India, skill for the world. I will say a little bit of demographics from the perspective of employment and skilling. So India in the context of the globe. Job skilling is to put it very simply, is a 3D issue. Why is that? There are 5,000 to 6,000 different internationally recognized skills, and we never think of those. We think of a few. We think of nurses, we think of doctors, but there are 5,000 to 6,000 different skills. And I'll say a little bit about that. And each of these has a different performance or quality level. Okay. So the standards and certification become very, very important. Okay, to both from the hirer side and from the supplier side. And the way I often put it is that skills and employments are two sides of the same coin. There's no point creating a lot of skills when there's no demand, and there's no point, you don't get jobs if you have demand but no skills. So you have to have both, and you have to ensure there's a market in the middle which connects the two. I'm trying to put it in very simple terms so everybody, and lastly, I'll speak a little bit of unbundling of services, which is very important for the international part of it. So demography, I'll give you a little perspective. A lot of the discussion you have is in the development context, which is the so-called demographic dividend. But what I've got here is the share of working age population. Just look at those red marks in the first two columns. So that is the decline in share of working age population of USA, West Europe, all the developed countries. Most of the middle income countries have already declining share of working age population. Vietnam, lower middle income. And the next line is what is going to happen in the next 30 years. So basic point here is that the share of working age population across the world for countries relevant for us is declining. India is the only country where the share is rising. You see the last line, that green 0.3. Okay. Now, this has a lot of implications. And if you look at it from we can look at it from a global perspective and an Indian perspective. From a global perspective, it is that there are different categories. So this 5,000, 6,000, to make it intelligible to people, I divide into three categories: low, medium, and high. And India will, from a global perspective, will have a huge amount of supply of each of these categories. But as a nation, we will move from low middle. What do we mean as a nation? The average. We have 1.4 billion people. 7 or half of that working age population. So on average, what we call the comparative advantage will move from low skill to middle skill to high skill. Remember, this appears contradictory. For the world, we'll supply every category. But from an Indian perspective, we'll be moving from comparative advantage in low to medium to high. It's a little difficult concept to understand, but let me move on. So what about skilling? Job skilling, it's a 3D issue. I just give this thing, there are lots of things written on it. Probably you can't read it, I can't read it myself. But let me make the points. I talked about a 3D issue. So low, middle, and high skills, as I said, these 5,000, 6,000 categories, if you are a policy maker or a policy advisor or doing, how do you make sense of so many, right? So one simple way which I have thought of is divide them into three parts. And the standards and certification is absolutely critical. We were discussing with Ms. Dwara that we must make sure that these are clear, consistent with the international. Okay, they are clear is needed even domestically. I'll give you, and after I tell you the next point, the role of government, NGOs, and private firms varies So you got to collaborate. Remember the enormity of the problem. 5,000, 6,000 job skills. 5,000, 6,000 types of jobs. And you have to match. First you have to create and make sure the demand matches supply. It's an enormous problem. Believe me, I've been thinking about this for the last 15 months that I have been in government. But this collaboration helps. There are certain parts where the private sector is doing very well actually. I came across a company who's doing high skilled stuff, which is supplying skills to the all multinationals abroad. Okay? So the high part of it actually the private sector is very good at because it's profitable. The medium, the low part nobody will do because it doesn't involve profit. So the government has to be very much involved with the help of NGOs. And the middle is where everybody kind of can play a role. So, yeah, so the point here is that two sides of the same coin, right? So you got to create the markets. And we were again discussing the eShram portal. Actually is a very good portal. And what we have discussed earlier is that to make it modular, so that states, and this is where you all come in, states can decide which modules to use and to buy into, to give you flexibility, okay, to give you an option. We don't want to force all of you to adopt the whole thing, but it's a very important portal, and I hope many of the states will the flexibility will be created, I hope, in the next year, where they can select the modules. We discussed technically that it has to be cloud-based and modular. I mean, that's just a technical thing, so that you have the options. Okay. So my last two, I've already emphasized standards and certification, but I'll give you an example. I came across an NGO. All this in the last 15 months, I had no clue. Believe me, I did not know the immensity of the stuff which is going on. You probably don't. I hope you learn during this workshop. There's an NGO which has created 13 different levels of skills below the teacher level. And they are training these people, and they told me they have a 100% placement record. You think of teachers, you never think there's below that there's anything. This gives you an idea of what I'm saying, 5,000, 6,000, and the collaborative potential. Now, if I was out there in your state and this NGO is there, I would help it, propagate, go all over the state, okay? And hopefully to other states also. So the market for different skills is possible. The short-term match for specific types, that's very important, and we have to facilitate it. I'm emphasizing this because you perhaps don't appreciate how important skilling is to jobs. Okay, people think of employment and then they think of skilling. To me, they are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have skills employment without skills, and vice versa. So capital still, the second point here is the capital skills and technology are complementary. So to give you one example, when MNCs come in, we're talking a lot about supply chains. You know what happens? They upgrade the skills. They need a higher level of skills in that supply chain. So they upgrade the skills. Okay? So you benefit doubly. The skills then propagate. They work out the methods of how to skill your people. Okay? So MNCs have played a huge role in the supply chains in upskilling. So just to your attention. Skills drive wages. We keep talking about lower wages. Wages are not rising. How do they rise? They rise when you upgrade. Me or any worker, you upgrade your skill, your productivity increases and your wages rise. Okay? This is also applicable to self-employed. You heard of the Vishwakarma scheme. Okay? So upgrading, skilling, that's the way. So types of skills and quality of skills, right? This is a two-dimension. You remember that complicated graph I had? And the third dimension was the cooperation. You can't just leave it. You can't leave it to the market. You can't leave it just to the government. Okay. So my final point here, and this is kind of the future, global opportunities. I'm sure you've all heard of supply chains. I'm going to talk about that. That's more domestic based, but the global. So the digitally delivered service exports have risen worldwide by about 275% over these 2 years, which you see there. 275%. So connectivity is going to be the key. That's the second point I would tell every state. Connect every village in your state to the internet. Okay, whether it is by optical fiber, last mile connectivity, remote areas you may need satellite. It's not the telephony, it's the digital connectivity. Okay, I don't care if you put telephony there, but digital is going to be crucial to your development. Services unbundling and remote delivery. What do we mean? And just for your information, the services which we are growing fast, India is gaining share. So remember what I told you about the high end? Our private sector is already doing it. What you need to do is facilitate. You want them to work in your state. Okay? If you want to gain from it, you have to facilitate them. Okay? You can say, okay, my third tier towns, I'll make it easy for you to operate from there. I'll make it easy for for women to work from their homes. All that will matter. So the business is already moving. But what is going to happen in the next 10 years or so is health, wellness, education, skilling, all these are going to be unbundled, and the parts which can be done online will move to other countries. I believe they'll move to India again, but we have to create that environment. We have to create a welcoming environment. I'll give you one example. I was in OECD about 9 months ago or so, and they complained they don't have enough people to work in government, believe it or not. They can't find enough people to work in government. So what is going to happen is you're going to unbundle the services. Those of you who has ever applied for a visa know that there is already unbundling. So there's a whole bunch of processing which is outsourced. Okay? Only the final chappa and the signature is done by them. So things like that. It is going to happen in every government service, every health service, every business service. So huge opportunities are going to open. So particularly in the developed countries, it's not only migration. That's the point I'm making. Okay, in all this, we all think of migration, which is correct. We should. Nurses, for example, relevant example. Huge demand for nurses, but there's going to be much, much more. That's the last point which I want to make, and then I'll finish. So developed countries, the opportunity, there's this rising anti-immigrant sentiment. So except for very critical things which they think are critical, like nursing, these will close. But these huge opportunities are going to open, and we must be out there looking for them, okay, grabbing them, encouraging our companies to go and the last implication of that is in the final thing. You've already heard about how we are doing MRAs, etc. But the important thing is going to be regulations there. For example, insurance regulations in the US do not allow insurance payers to pay for hospital services here. So if a person flies in, gets surgery and goes back, that is cheaper now than what they have to pay in the US. But the regulations don't allow that payment. So that's another thing we will have to work on. All of us on this side to change these regulations. Okay, sorry I've taken a long time, but I'm just going to end abruptly there without repeating all the things I said in the introduction. Thank you.